I guess it's just not as unusual as I think we think it is. And as I was researching for this podcast to try to hope to be accurate with the information I was sharing, I found that 3 in 100 people will experience psychosis in their life. That feels like a lot.
3 out of 100, every 100.
Yeah. So if you think about like if you're ever in like a big conference or 3 of those people, or in like I guess a grocery store at a busy time, right? Like 3 of those people will experience psychosis, not forever, but just will experience it.
So here we are again.
Yeah.
Second episode.
Yep.
The first one was well received, much to, I think, all of our surprises.
Yeah.
Really glad that everything resonated with folks. So that was comforting, especially since, we don't know how things are going to land, even with ourselves, let alone with other people that are hearing what we have to say.
Yeah.
So
I think we started the podcast.
I think we did. So welcome, folks.
Yeah.
Yeah. So this is Crystal.
Jenn.
Marcus is behind the door doing some sound engineering. So welcome back to the second episode. I guess we'll say the date. We're recording on Saturday, February 18th. So just for context of the time of what's happening in the world, so that there's some just an idea, context. So I guess we're gonna get officially started now. So like I said a little bit ago, we are really surprised, overwhelmed, humbled, grateful for the outpouring of support that we received from folks, and especially for myself, having talked about my grief journey and having people reach out to me either directly via friends or what have you, just knowing that it landed with folks however it landed, which is great because I'm just kind of figuring this out as I go, and if I can provide any type of insight from my own personal experience, that means a lot to me.
I think that's what even makes it, I think, more well received, is that it is just, hey, I'm a person, I'm going through this, I'm an expert in my own experience, I don't know where that lands with you, and that we find that the human experiences, we have a lot more in common than we don't, and that was such a kind of monumental experience to see, like, that's my experience. I don't know, if that resonates. I'm just sharing mine, and that many folks could relate to your experience with grief, even if their grief was very different. Like one of your friends.
Exactly. One of my friends who reached out to me after listening to the podcast, who is a foster parent who eventually was able to adopt 2 of the children that her and her partner were fostering. They also were fostering a 3rd child from basically birth to last summer after she turned a year old, and she was reunited with her biological family, which was very difficult for my friend and, the rest of their family, because she was a part of their family for the duration of her life.
Yeah.
And here we are, maybe 7 months later, and my friend is continuing that grieving process and telling me that although her grief was not the same as mine, for different reasons, she could relate to it, and it's something that nobody really talks about in feeling that loss, which really just drives home that grief comes in all different shapes, forms, sizes, as we all know. And although our experiences may be different, whatever that grief is or the loss, we can find a similarity. We can relate to what it feels like to be navigating this journey, which there is no guidebook really. Nobody really understands grief or talks about it in a frank way. So when people do, it can be either jarring or an aha, or finding similarity and, oh yeah, me too. So it's normalizing experiences, which is what I have felt along the way in different things that I've read, or different podcasts that I've listened to, or even social media connections that I've made, which if you know me well enough, you know that I have a complicated relationship with social media. For a variety of reasons, but I have been able to connect with other folks who are also grieving.
Yeah.
And one such person, her name is Kim. I met her through Instagram. Her social media page is Travel and Balanced. Kim lives in Rhode Island. Both of her parents passed away within 3 months of each other in 2021. So we've been able to connect, in grieving the loss of a parent. And we've been able to support each other because we can relate to what we're going through. We live in different places. Our losses were different, but it's still that understanding of being in this club that nobody really wants to be a part of.
Yeah, but yet everyone will.
But everyone will be, in understanding what it feels like to have anticipatory grief.
Yeah.
The significance of important dates, whether it's your loved one's birthday, the day of their death, anything.
Right.
And then feeling a little bit lost sometimes, or not seeing when people who matter to you don't reach out to check in and see how you're doing.
Yeah.
And that can be for a variety of reasons. Maybe they don't remember the date. Maybe they're afraid that they're going to upset you by not checking in, when really, for the most part, and again, speaking for myself, we would like to have people check in on us, not just on significant dates, but periodically, because yes, time has gone on, and oftentimes that's what happens. People stop checking in because they think it's fine, or life goes on, which it does. So she's been a great resource to me. She is a certified grief educator. She's certified in grief yoga, and she offers grief yoga classes throughout Rhode Island. So if anybody lives in that area that happens to be listening to our podcast, definitely reach out to Kim. She will be offering a grief yoga via an online platform next month. Very cool. You can check her social media page to get more information about that. So I will hopefully be able to take part in that, since we don't live in, nearby states. So just a shout out to Kim of Travel and Balance for being such a great resource and for providing support to me, even though we've never met in real life. So shout out to Kim.
And the power that social media can have.
Yes.
When it's not toxic or harmful, or that when we can recalibrate what our relationship is with social media, how we use it, there are positives.
Yeah.
Surely we get inundated with a lot of the negative stuff. But, finding that balance in even the relationship with social media and the connection that it really does offer in ways we would never, without it, you may have never crossed Kim's path.
Yeah, absolutely. So I'm very grateful for that, and for the other platforms that I've followed that are grief-centric, which have been very helpful to me, which I then either repost or share to my stories, just shining a light on grief and how to navigate it, what it feels like, how it might look, how it impacts you, which it impacts all parts of you. Physical, emotional, mental, spiritually. Yeah. So thank you to everybody who reached out about the first episode, or sent a message, or a message through somebody. We're super grateful and so appreciative that we've been able to make connections with folks this way, building our community.
Yeah.
Virtually and in person. So
yeah, and that it's also been really cool for us, as average folks who were like, let's start a podcast, and with the mindset of, if folks hear it, cool, but really it is for us, or like taking a peek into our conversations and being able to share that with folks and then have it be well received is like, great. It's a super great bonus. But I also think that it still is always just going to be a space for us to process out some things or share some things or see where it lands and see how relatable, and, also understand that sometimes we are going to talk about hard things. I think maybe not even sometimes, maybe a lot of the times, because as you just said, like we don't do a great job as a society of talking about the harder things. So kind of segueing into today's topic.
Yeah, so I know that we've said that, whatever happens on the podcast. The last time we really didn't have an idea or a script or anything truly that we were going to talk about, whatever kind of came up, which I did know that grief was something I wanted to talk about. And then this time we've had, a lot of things happening in the news, in our country, in the world, that are not sitting well with us. And so we actually do have a topic today to talk about, and I'm gonna go ahead and let Jenn take the lead on this. So anytime you're ready, Jenn.
Okay. So I do want to say, that we want to give a trigger warning for, suicide, infanticide, and uncomfortable truths, right? Because I do think a lot of what we do talk about is uncomfortable truths, but in trueness, this is an opportunity to take a beat and decide, right? Am I going to listen? Am I ready to listen? Do I even know what's coming? Am I already aware of what a particular news story? But we just want to give you a minute, especially being trauma-informed folks, to let you know that some hard stuff is coming. So I'm going to speak about this story as it relates to me, and then what kind of resulted from it personally. And I wrestle with, like, do I talk about this on the podcast? I'm nervous. It's personal, but I feel like that is the reason, because we don't talk about it well, and then the normalization, I think, of the feelings and thoughts, and then the connection, the connection, because I think often for a lot of folks, when we go into hard feelings, sometimes we withdraw and we don't reach out to connection.
I'm guilty of that.
Guilt, very much so, right? And then we don't reach out. We don't want to burden folks, or maybe it's weird, or it's what we're experiencing is weird and it's hard, and or I don't want to be being messy in real life, right? And as a mental health therapist, I think there's another layer of that for myself that I would like to say I don't apply to myself, but I do, right? As like, I'm a professional, so I should be past that, or I shouldn't feel that, or why is that happening to me? I know better. We know when we were trained in grad school, you can't therapize yourself or your family, or your friends. And when you're too close to something, you don't know. It's also why the docs can't operate on their family members or whatever. It's just too close. It's too personal. But I still kind of struggle with that hindsight of how did I not know, or why can't I name what I'm going through until sometimes after I fall apart or am messy in public, right? And by public, I mean just anyone who can see me, not in the middle of Target, who did not sponsor this, but can if they want.
Coming soon to Middletown.
Right, allegedly. But so, in the news, a woman named Lindsay Clancy has murdered her 3 children and attempted to kill herself. and was not successful. And so she is still alive, and her attempt to kill herself ended up causing paralysis for her. So she is hospitalized, and then of course facing charges, right? And so a lot of folks, clutch their pearls and how could this happen? How could a mother do this? That kind of stuff, right? And then we're quick to want to create a story, and the news and the person prosecuting her is trying to create that story of a villain who is a cold-blooded killer, right? And the truth is that I don't know Lindsay, but her story hit me so hard and so powerfully and personally. And that does not mean I want to harm my children, but it is shining a light, albeit very devastating and a tragedy, on the maternal mental health crisis that we are very much in, and have been for probably way longer than anyone can really account for, and the way we do motherhood in our country, and the way that it leads to doing something unspeakable, because it is my firm belief that almost every mother would never ever want to cause harm to their children in a sane state. And so for a woman to do that feels as though there is a great significant issue, and it's not an individual issue. It's not what happened to this one woman, because there are actually a lot of mothers who are supporting Lindsay publicly, right? So, and if it is something that's just this rare, weird thing, she'd be sort of a pariah. Yet there's women who are, and myself included, rushing to empathize and understand, and of course be devastated for the losses, because when you're in a state of psychosis, you are not in reality, and so you do things that you would not normally do, and you're not aware of it, right? So some of the news articles said she didn't report her psychosis. You don't know you're in psychosis to report it, or if you do start to feel off, it's usually very scary for folks to be like, am I hearing voices? And then we as a society don't do mental health well as a rule, and especially not more significant mental health issues like hearing voices and seeing things that aren't there. So it's scary.
It is scary, and I think there's a fear of, well, if I actually verbalize this out loud, not only to myself, but to others, what's going to happen to me?
Yes, what's going to happen to me? Am I going to be dragged away and put into a place that is our only option when we are suicidal or homicidal?
Will I then be labeled? Will it affect my job in the future?
Are my kids going to be taken?
All of that.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
So it festers, right? And you sort of hope for it to go away. And Lindsay is also in the healthcare field, right? So she's a labor and delivery nurse. So it just keeps getting deeper. How could she? She delivers babies. She helps to deliver babies. And I, as a member of the mental health professionals and a part of the healthcare system, I can say that, COVID has taken a massive toll on healthcare workers' health and mental health, because for folks in the medical field and in the mental health field, there was no pause for us. There were no pauses for a lot of professions. I'm just sort of focusing on this one particularly, right? So there was no pause for us. And in fact, not only was there not a pause, we were in crisis mode and everything was ramped up. And so we operated at the highest level and for a long period of time. So when there's a crisis, there's an end in sight, however long, but it's not 2 years, it's not 3 years, it's not up and down the way we've experienced COVID. And this was unprecedented for everyone who's been alive to experience something like COVID. So everybody showed up like they do in the healthcare field. Healthcare folks were already taxed as it was, and then here comes a global crisis. a medical crisis. And then after that, there's no recovery, right? So while we're arguably in a much safer space, there's not like we can go, okay, cool, everyone's good. I'm gonna take a beat. I'm gonna take a break, because many of us work because we have to for money, not because it's fun. Our incomes matter to our families, so we just keep going and we keep going and we keep going. Yes, we're burnt out, but now, we just keep going. And so I can't help but think that played a factor in the level of burnout that she must have felt in a caretaking profession, right? That many women occupy the majority of these caretaking and caregiving professions. And then we go home and continue the caregiving that doesn't stop, right? And there's this sort of feeling like there's an expectation that we have this endless supply of caregiving, and we can do it for paid labor and we can do it for unpaid labor, and we're supposed to do it with a smile, but don't forget to also have self-care, and don't forget to also work out, and don't forget to also eat healthy, and don't forget to also make sure your kids are eating healthy, and don't forget to make sure your partner is happy, and the list goes on, and it's never ending. And there's not a real, I think, regard for that. It's just keep going. And I think about, if you're a chef, right, and you cook all day for a living, and you come home, you might not feel like cooking. You're just like, maybe I'm going to order out. I'm kind of burnt out from cooking. But someone told you it doesn't matter. You still have to cook from now until you're basically ready to pass out and go to sleep. So you do it for paid labor, you do it for unpaid labor. And that is the truth for many women. It's not to say their partners aren't involved or helpful, but some folks, that is not their situation, and some folks are single parents.
Or they're parents that have a partner who's not really involved.
And don't feel like it's their
responsibility.
Role.
Right.
Mm-hmm. So the domestic continues to fall on the shoulders of women more so than other folks, right? And so that just keeps going and going, and it's incessant, and it never ever stops. But we say it's okay, I can keep doing it, it's okay, and I love my kids, and I love it, and the news story shows her with her children, and people saying she was a doting mother. Yes, correct. So maybe we take a beat and say, is this really something that just happened with Lindsay, or is there a pretty huge problem that's going on? And I don't think we do a good job as a society of doing that. We just want to pin it on one person and just like, I don't know what happened to her. I guess it's just what it is. She just couldn't handle the pressure. She should have done this. She should have done that. She did tell her husband she was not feeling well, or she had a touch of anxiety, or she maybe had a touch of some of the postpartum depression stuff. She did go to a crisis mental health hospital, and they released her after 5 days. Is that judgment of the hospital? No, it's a judgment of a broken system where insurance says we're not paying anymore. And then they go, what do? We give her a bunch of heavy meds and say, good luck, because that system is taxed, because those healthcare providers are taxed. And now, we have this horrendous situation, which I know there are nuances to her story that are specific, and we want to blame, one thing or one person. Well, he should have, or they should have, or it's the healthcare, it's the heavy drugs she was on. It's the whole system. It's the whole way we do motherhood, the way we do caregiving professions. It's all of it that we have to take a look at. But in order to do that, we'd have to, dismantle a lot of things, or honor the fact that mothers' work and women's work is intense and incessant.
Which also means that we would have to shine a light on ourselves, turn the mirror onto ourselves, and have a little bit of reflection of how are we a part of the system? How are we upholding the system?
Yeah.
Are we knowledgeable of how it's broken, but turn a blind eye? Because, well, it doesn't really affect me, so
Yeah.
I don't really have to worry about it.
Yeah. Or we practice horizontal oppression, right? Which is when an oppressed group then just kind of goes after themselves or, each other, where we say, well, I didn't have a problem. Like, I got through it. So I don't know, buck up. But yet all of us wished we had more support, more connection. Retrospectively can say, oh yeah, I went through a really hard time and I didn't even realize it. And nobody noticed because I said, yeah, I'm fine. Or how are you doing? What are you going to say? It's a little psychotic, no.
Right, which I think also might play into the not really being seen. I know that this is not my experience with, I'm child-free by choice, but if you're trying to make it relatable, anything that you might be going through, right? And that you're suffering, hurting, and the people who are supposed to know you don't really see you when you say you're fine. They just accept that.
Yeah.
For whatever reason. Maybe the expectation is, well, if you really weren't, you would tell me.
Yes.
Or I don't have time to actually hear what's going on with you, so I'm just going to accept that fine. Right. And then the person who is not doing well, not wanting to feel like a burden, like you said earlier.
Or hoping it goes away. I'll get through it.
Or, if I may do so, when I, still on my grief journey, but early on, there were things that I was experiencing that I didn't realize was normal, like having it F with your brain and your memory and cognition and all of that. Like, I didn't realize that was grief related until I was able to read about it from somebody who had gone through, their own grief. And I was like, oh, right. Yeah, I am experiencing that as well. So it was normalized and validated me like there wasn't something wrong. So,
and what a weight off your chest. Like, oh, it makes sense.
Right. And so I can only imagine by talking about it, right? Or being asked or being seen or having somebody validate, similar to, I think, what we're trying to do here today, but also in general, just shining a light on, like you said, hard truths or difficult situations to let ourselves know and all of the rest of us know that we're not alone.
Right.
That other people experience similar things for similar reasons, different situations, whatever the case may be, is that you aren't alone.
Right.
And there's nothing wrong with you. Right. What's wrong is that we don't talk about it. We're not educated.
There's not deliberate, well-known spaces to say, oh, you just had a baby and you have 2 other kids and you are also a caregiver. Okay, yeah. Here we go, rushing in to support and really mother the mother and have the village and the community, that mothers need, everybody needs. I think becoming a mother and being a mother is such a really clear demarcation of I wasn't a mom and then I was, right? Or even just after you had your first kid, oh, you're good. And not respecting that every child you have adds another layer. When we had one child, that was one experience. When we had our second kid, and people had said, oh yeah, it's like exponentially more challenging. So we can verbalize that, and it's like, good luck. And it was exponential. And then parenting through COVID was just a whole nother thing. But we're just left to like, yeah, you already got one, so you'll figure it out. No, it was a wildly different experience. And of course, every kid is different, but every pregnancy is different. Every birth is different. The dynamics between my partner and I, we weren't, it was sort of divide and conquer. We don't really get to spend the time that we maybe used to when, our daughter went to bed and it was like, oh, it's our time. Like, it's just not like that anymore. And I would say, well, we signed up. No, we didn't. We didn't know that. Even folks said that, like, if we were just more informed about what this experience is or what it could be, and not in a scary way that our society likes to do, fear-based education, but just true communication, like, okay, this might change, and just be aware of that. So if we're in the confines of a system that doesn't actually provide support or a village, let's make an informed decision. But instead it's like, good luck. It's going to change things. But it's not, let's rush in together and do this together. It's just hyper independence and that toxic independence. And I don't know how many folks really know this, but when during the postpartum period, right, which now is arbitrarily decided as a year, when we just feel the reality of a postpartum period really is after you have a kid, like you're in your postpartum period. That's it. You're now forever postpartum because you had a kid. It's post baby. But in the first year, the thing that I said the number one sort of killer of women in their first year after having a baby is suicide. Not complications medically, not I don't even know any other thing. It's suicide. That feels highly problematic in the way that again, first of all, Lindsay was in her first year after the birth of her third child, so she attempted, I understand that she also, killed her children. I'm not taking away from that. It's devastating and now something she will forever live with now that she's no longer in her psychosis and have to be aware that she did. But she was one of those women, right? And so if we have a whole group of people where suicide is the number one killer, it feels as though we might need to take a look at that in a more deep way instead of just being like, she couldn't make it. It's much bigger than just one person. It may just be how we do parenting, family, motherhood, just caring about people, in general in our society and giving space. We don't have a real maternity leave. If you research, how our maternity leave measures up to the rest of the world, it's abysmal and embarrassing, especially as an alleged wealthy nation that has resources. It's very, very bad. And, some women go back to the paid labor force bleeding still after they had a baby because they don't have
leave or time off or...
Yeah. And then we're talking about, working in the paid labor force and then also managing an infant who wakes regularly throughout the night, who you may be the primary source of feeding for, that you wake up, several times throughout the night and your sleep is interrupted, right? You are deprived of sleep and expected to return to the paid labor force as if nothing is happening, right? And that you're fine and you're supposed to keep up with everybody who's not sleep deprived. And I've said and will continue to say that sleep deprivation is a form of torture, yet it is commonly practiced with postpartum mothers. It's not in the vein of torture, however, it is the same impact, that sleep is a biological function, it's not a choice, and it is interrupted, and that we're expected to just go back to work and operate normally. And even if you're not going back to the paid labor force, just trying to operate normally, not realistic. And sleep deprivation also causes hallucinations and delusions and psychosis. Yeah. But instead, our response as a society is to sleep train your baby. Babies don't need to be trained how to sleep. It's a biological function. But that's the response. I think maybe paid labor might need to adjust how they impact women. I think maybe paid labor might need to think about maternity leave and paternity leave and any parental leave, because when the other partner returns to work, you leave the person who had the baby in a vulnerable state. So we need them too, right? So, again, very broken system. And in order to change it would mean having to really look at these things and demand that paid labor supports us. Or we're forced to look at, do we leave the paid labor force if we have the privilege? How many women do not have the privilege to leave the paid labor force or to adjust their schedule or to go back part-time or any of that kind of stuff? But yeah, so I say all that, and it feels much different speaking about it, because I'm like, well, I hope any of this made sense, or it came out well, or I don't know. I'm not too preachy or whatever, but I say all that because I do feel like I'm relatable to this woman, and I feel fortunate that I never reached a space where I wanted to harm myself or my children. However, I am aware in this way that this story impacted me so significantly, that the idea of passive suicidal ideation, or just kind of not wanting to be here anymore, kind of wishing like, I just wish I'd just disappear sometimes, or I feel really trapped in my situation, I feel like there's no way out, and like a deep sense of loneliness, are all parts of passive suicidal ideation, and then I very much can relate to that. And as a mental health professional, to say I have felt that way as a result of not having enough help when it comes to parenting and child rearing, and trying to have a relationship with my partner, and trying to work in the paid labor force, and trying to do different things to make this different for moms in my role in the paid labor force. It has depleted me. And then, of course, working through COVID and supporting folks through mental health crises in a global pandemic. I think it broke me. I think it broke me in a way I did not know. And when you're in a crisis, you just survive. And now we feel safe-ish again. And I think all those feelings can kind of flood in and come to the surface. So I think that's just kind of where I'm at, is just feeling like I've worked and continue to work so hard and overwork and overextend to be the mom I want to be, the partner I want to be, the professional I want to be. And I have felt sometimes just really, really trapped, and really, irritable with my kids, and not wanting to be around them. And again, I know Lindsay's case is an extreme case, although 20% of, postpartum moms who die is related to suicide, so it's not all that extreme. But of course, her killing her children is a particularly, extreme and difficult piece. I just feel like I just could feel what I believe that she was feeling, and how depleted and empty and overdone and just done with it all, and how she got to the point of psychosis. And I guess it's just not as unusual as I think we think it is. And as I was researching for this podcast to try to hope to be accurate with the information I was sharing, I found that 3 in 100 people will experience psychosis in their life. That feels like a lot.
3 out of 100?
Mm-hmm.
Every 100?
Yeah. So if you think about, like, if you're ever in like a big conference, or 3 of those people, or in like, I guess a grocery store at a busy time, right? Like 3 of those people will experience psychosis. Not forever, but just will experience it. It's not as uncommon as we think it is, but gosh, are we afraid to say anything like that, where those kind of intrusive thoughts might come in, or we're hearing voices. Because if we did say that, right, the fear of what will happen. But imagine a society that, oh, honey, you're not okay. Come on, let's go. We gotta take care of you. Not we have to make you a pariah and say, what's wrong with you? And have punitive repercussions, because that's truthfully how we deal with a lot of mental health and trauma in our society, is punitive repercussions. Where if, we as therapists, first of all, I'm going to say I'm not an active and practicing therapist anymore, but we as therapists, if someone is suicidal, in our experience, do you know who we have to call?
The police?
Yeah, the police. Those are the folks you call when you're in trouble, or something's wrong and something's bad. And I'm sure there's probably plenty of feelings and thoughts about police and what they do, but they surely are not mental health professionals. They're not there to de-escalate a suicidal situation. And at times when I worked in a different organization where they had cuffed folks who are suicidal. I understand there might be a danger to themselves, but this is not the way. So like even when you are suicidal, we don't have resources in a real way. Let me be clear and say, if you are feeling suicidal, you should certainly share that with your therapist. Is a difference between being actively suicidal with a plan, and that's sort of when we have to intervene, than it is to say, I just don't want to be here anymore. I just feel hopeless. I feel like I don't know what to do. And again, I'm not trying to deter folks from sharing the suicidality, but I am trying to shed a light on the reality of how we treat folks who are not okay. And then when we ourselves are not okay, why we don't engage, right? I've had folks stay in crisis hospitals and say, I feel like it's worse now because of what I experienced there, the trauma that I experienced there. Because these are vulnerable people, and not everybody respects the vulnerability and treats folks with respect, and they become exploited in some of these scenarios. Again, not trying to deter folks from going and seeking help that they need. I'm just trying to be realistic and really share why I don't want to be a part of our mental health system in this way anymore, because it is not supportive and connective and rooted in empathy. It's just rooted in, oh God, you're a problem.
Let's put you somewhere.
Should put you away. Just like, we hear horror stories of like old mental institutions and the horrible things that happen there. It's not like that anymore. We're not doing lobotomies anymore, but is it really that different? Or are folks still really being harmed there? And then the message just being,
you don't matter.
You don't matter. When you're difficult, you need to be put away.
Right.
Or when you're not okay. And again, I'm not crapping on the hospitals per se. It's a broken system. So they're doing the best they can to try to get insurance to cover it. And then here comes the insurance, like, well, we're not going to cover anymore. And then the insurances are dictating how we practice because we decide to commodify the healthcare system. So we're not going to get paid now if you just sit here. So you got to go. Even though we all know they shouldn't.
That you're not okay.
They shouldn't go. Yeah. So.
Well, that's a lot. So first of all, just thank you for sharing that. I understand how difficult it can be to open yourself up, to express vulnerabilities, to say the things that are hard to say, whether it's about ourselves, about the system, and saying that type of stuff about yourself, right, means people are going to see you, which is very scary.
Yeah.
Even though that's what we really want, right, is to always be seen, heard, have our experience validated. But with that comes fear of, am I too much?
Yeah.
Am I making people uncomfortable?
Yes, very much so.
Am I making myself uncomfortable?
Yeah.
What are people going to think?
Yeah.
So it's all of those things. And I think that over the past 2 podcasts, I think that we've both experienced that for different reasons, with you sharing your story today and being so open and honest and vulnerable about those feelings and having this moment of clarity, I guess, in trying to really dig deeper, which I think we both do personally in our own lives and also in our friendship and maybe in our other relationships, of digging a little deeper and asking the questions of, this is impacting me so deeply. If I'm having these feelings or I'm being triggered in whichever way, the why. Why is that happening to me? Yeah. And for you to have had to sit with that, right? Which it's hard to sit in some discomfort sometimes. And
be the person who's like, this poor woman, when everyone's like, these poor children, and I am there too, but I also am like, what are people gonna think if I'm like, this poor woman though, and do I not care about these kids? I do care about her children, of course, but I immediately, my heart just broke for this woman, and I like sobbed,
Yeah, right? And it's having that moment of being able to recognize yourself in her, right? And not just her. Other women who have been in similar situations, whatever that similar looks like, right? And feeling a little helpless or hopeless.
Yeah.
As well.
Yeah. And wanting to, scream, I think a lot of us want to scream, and we bite back, and smile instead, right? And be like, yeah, or suppress, whether it's because that's what we're supposed to do, what we're supposed to look like, or, we want to keep that idea of, not that we actually think we're perfect, but that we think we should be perfect, right? And we actually know we're not perfect, and we feel so, not enough. Well, I can't think of the word of not enough right now, but, unworthy, but like,
less than, imperfect.
I can't think.
All the things.
Right.
All of the things.
That like inadequate. That was what it was. And I think that's what perpetuates some of this, right? I know this is a bit gruesome, and I do understand that, but the fact that she killed her children with exercise bands, right? I felt like that was a profound, not deliberate, but statement about all the things with motherhood and being a woman, and being like, yep, and she had the exercise bands because why? Because she was trying to keep it fit and trying to keep healthy. The yuckiness and that's how that happened. It felt like significant. It just felt significant. If society chooses to look harder at this, about what this all is and how this can be, it will not be. I'm sorry to sound not hopeful, but it will not be a moment of change, but how it could be. I mean, literally the vice president of our country declared a maternal health crisis, and money is being put out into the community to navigate that. I think a lot of it's medical related, because we know the maternal mortality rate in our country, again, allegedly so wealthy with all the resources, and the rate is so high, and it's particularly high for women of color. So I think a lot of the resources are going there, but here we have this now symbol currently of the state of where we're at, and it could be such an opportunity for all of us to just, and I'm talking about any gender, right? To pause and just think about that. Whether you think about your own mother, your friends, yourself, or whatever, that we can't keep doing it this way. The state of motherhood and the expectations is literally killing us and our children.
Actual things that I said, because when you're in it, you don't really know what.
It's like floating.
It's just happening, and you're saying the things, and you don't know how it's gonna.
Are we back on?
How it's gonna land.
And we're back. No, I'm just kidding.
How it's gonna land, but I think I told you and a couple of folks that after having listened to the podcast prior to Marcus releasing it, I had a very visceral. Emotional and physical reaction to listening to the podcast, and I had to sit with why was that so impactful for me. And when I mean emotional, I was crying pretty hard listening to it, for a myriad of reasons. Number one, hearing myself tell my story. Number two, having felt like there was some relief in saying it, although I've said all of the stuff that I said on the podcast a lot over the past, it's almost been a year and a half since my mom passed away. But putting it on a platform where it's going to be heard over and over again, and worried about how was I going to sound, and emotional because I thought that I did a great job and telling my story and sounding like I knew what I was talking about.
Yeah.
Whatever that means, it's my own experience.
Confident.
So of course, I'm the expert in my own experience. And, you know, just navigating what that felt like, and then, you know, dealing with that, but also feeling proud as well that, you know, here's this thing that we did, and then having people reach out to us with such great feedback really meant a lot as well. And I think that what I learned, although I already knew it, but it brought it out for me, is that this grief journey, this whatever we're on, right, is continuous. And as trauma is, you'll continue to be triggered. Mm-hmm. And that's exactly what happened to me. I was triggered in listening to the podcast, feeling the feels, and then watching something on TV, maybe that same night that I heard the, you know, pre-release of the podcast, watching somebody have to take their loved one off of life support, which is what I had to do from my experience, and being intensely triggered by that emotionally and watching that play out on the screen, having my own feelings about it, and being angry and actually expressing that to the TV alone in my house about how that's not really how it is. It doesn't happen that quickly. It's not that magical and beautiful.
Right.
And maybe that is for some people's experience. I don't know. But I do know that I did not see myself reflected on TV, which, again, that's not their job. But I could feel the feelings that this husband was having to go through and making the decision of, is it the right time, making it happen, and then, well, what next?
Yeah.
What happens now?
Yeah.
So all of that to say that I, too, also had similar feelings that you're having, of feeling naked and exposed, and am I making sense?
Yeah.
Am I sounding preachy?
Yeah.
What am I even doing?
Right.
And I think that's going to be natural, right? Mm-hmm. When you're talking about, like you said, the real hard truths or our own experiences and all the stuff that comes up from allowing ourselves to be seen and to say the things.
For sure.
And
especially when, like, I think as women, we're very much accustomed to shrinking ourselves to whatever circumstance.
Exactly.
Right? And always don't be too much, and don't, like, be seen, but only kind of if you're in a sexual way, and then don't let us know you are. Like, it's just always,
and you have to smile, because as we get told so often, you look prettier when you smile.
Right. And that being, just so you know, we're always observing you, right? We're always observing your appearance, and so you should always be appealing to us in some way, whether that's not too emotional, cuter, smiley, sexier, but not too sexy, but or then you're this. Always have that running in your head, because yes, folks, the societal messaging that we get, we internalize, even if we think we don't, and we actively think we're rejecting it, and we do on some levels, right? And I think one of the awesome reckonings through COVID that I had was how deeply in there, like, the misogyny and patriarchy really is deeply interwoven, because most folks who know me know I have a very, F you, kind of F the system that oppresses folks mentality, and thinking I don't subscribe to that, and then becoming very aware of the ways I still did, and the layers that keep peeling back, which is, I think, part of doing work.
Doing the work
is
growth,
that
recognition of ourselves and the
and
systems that play into that.
Right. And I think also understanding that, like, we're quick to be like, what is wrong with me? What is wrong with me? Why can't I hack it? Why can't I do it? Very applicable to moms, what's wrong with me that I feel lonely? What's wrong with me that I don't feel enough, or I don't feel connected to my baby? What is wrong with me? And sure, that's super helpful, right? And we should be doing that, reflecting on ourselves. And we often don't take into account what is wrong with the system that perpetuates this, and holding the system accountable as well. That systemic ideologies impact the citizens, right? The things that we subscribe to, we don't mean to, we do mean to, they impact us. And then how deeply we are affected by that can get unraveled and like unwoven when we have conversations like this, where they're uncomfortable, like uncomfortable truths, right? Like, oh, that's, and I am known for stating some uncomfortable truths that you said sometimes can be very abrasive to folks, so that when you say something that doesn't always land, but why is it uncomfortable then, right? Because is there some truth?
I myself have experienced those similar feelings with you, Jen, of saying the things, albeit you do it very kindly and with empathy and the do with it what you will. But if I may offer a different narrative or a different way of seeing it, and oftentimes I'm like, fuck you.
Right. right. As one should say.
As one should. Yeah. But also knowing that it comes from a place of love, of being fully seen.
Yeah.
And being able to see myself a different way.
Right.
And, you know, I sit with it, and it's not always comfortable.
Yeah.
Because sometimes I just don't want to hear it.
Yeah.
And
absolutely.
I always need to hear it, is what I find. But I think we all should have that one person in our life that is going to say the hard things.
Yeah.
Even knowing that we may not want to hear it. But I also think that there are those few relationships that you have in your life where having the really hard, uncomfortable conversations and being truly vulnerable, knowing that, ooh,
yeah,
are we going to make it through this? Will it make or break our friendship,
yes,
our partnership,
yeah,
whatever that is? And then allowing yourselves to be vulnerable, stripping away all the things, saying the stuff that's hard to say, and speaking our truths, and coming out of it on the other side a little bit stronger. No, a lot more stronger. Having a relationship that's a lot stronger. And we had, you know, something similar happen to that in our friendship a couple of years ago, and it was uncomfortable and it wasn't great, and we both thought that the other person was going to break up with the other one.
Right, like, that's it, everyone.
Right.
I guess it's over.
Right. And when we were able to sit back and reflect on that situation individually, and then, you know, together, understanding why it happened.
Right? Is the coming together and talking about each other's experiences, because these are not like knockdown, drag out fights in the middle of a bar. Although
this experience did happen in the middle of a restaurant, and
so that did happen.
However, where I was having some feels,
and I was like, "Great, this is great. Let it out." That doesn't always work for like folks. Not all folks.
Exactly. You know, if you're an introvert such as myself, sitting in the middle of a packed restaurant.
And my partner, who also very much was like, "You did that in a restaurant?" I was like, "Yeah, that was fine."
Shout out to Marcus, my twin. Having, you know, being pushed into what felt like a corner for different reasons, and knowing that that's not who you are generally. Like, you do challenge me, and I accept the challenge to kind of step outside of my comfort zone, but this was a whole different aggressive way.
It was. And I didn't even know. I thought I was doing it in that like way that I do it.
Right. Mm-hmm. And then sitting back, and you sitting with your stuff and me sitting with my stuff, and then coming together and talking, it's like, oh, so really there is truth to the communication thing, right? Like, she felt some kind of way, her own way, or how I was feeling, and neither one knew like why we were having these experiences until we had these hard conversations, which then led the way for us to be able to continue to have difficult conversations if they come up.
Yeah. And I think, you know, the whole idea of like, oh, I guess that's it, we're going to break up, is not because it was just, I think for myself, right? Like, I really messed it up. I did it wrong. I messed it up. I'm unlikable, and I hurt feelings, and I don't deserve that friendship anymore. And that person, why would they want to be around me if I've hurt them in this way? And that's where I was like, when I said, you're like, don't break up with me, you're like, what? Why would you think? I was like, don't you want to break up with me? Like, obviously I messed up.
Which we all have those experiences. I know I've had those experiences myself in friendships, in my current partnership, you know, of feeling like something is going to be the end of it, and knowing that, why is that? Well, the feelings of unworthiness, of being too much.
I'm only likable when I am what you want me to be.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Let's not step out of that box. Let's not allow ourselves to be fully seen, which is something that we talked about last night in my women's healing circle that I have one Friday a month.
That's right.
And
for a very, very reasonable cost. And I know this isn't very fluid, but side note, we have a special promo code for podcast listeners for Yoga with Crystal.
Yes. So what is that promo code?
It is Cottage 10, COTTAGE, the number 10. 10.
So if you are looking to try a private session, come to a class, come to a women's healing circle. If you register online and put in your promo code for our podcast listeners, you will get 10% off of
any service with Crystal. And the website again, balanced with an ED, mindjourney.com/yoga schedule. Or you can just go to balancemindjourney.com, click around, have a good time. But you'll find the services with yoga, services for Yoga with Crystal and healing circles with Crystal, which if you haven't been into any of her services, definitely a great way to try it out. But since I think we're really kind of coming on women's friendships, right? And the Women's Healing Circle is just a beautiful space to bring your friend, but also to connect with new women.
Which is exactly what happened last night. You know, February is the month of love, however you want to subscribe to that, or that it's been commercialized, especially with Valentine's Day and feeling some kind of way if you're single, or it not looking the way it's supposed to, whatever that's supposed to be, right? We don't know.
Also, being single is a choice, and it's a great one. So.
Exactly. Being single is not a terrible thing. And so last night, my theme was self-love, right? Because you have no greater relationship than the relationship with yourself and loving yourself. So,
as always, on point.
Yeah. So we talked about that, and you know, I read a poem or passages in the beginning and at the end of every healing circle, and I also have folks grab a trauma-informed affirmation card or yoga affirmation card that are from another social media site, Transcending Trauma Through Yoga, run by Zabi Yamasaki, which she's got a great platform if you want to check her out on the social media.
Yeah, she's awesome.
So the cards are part from her. They were designed by somebody else, but you know, I have everybody choose one at the beginning of all of my classes with the intention of whichever card that you get is a message that the universe wants you to hear, which I've posted on social media a few times, you know, the cards that I pull, which are always right on point.
And that's soon to be in your newsletter.
Oh yeah, apparently there's going to be a newsletter coming out. So Jenn has a way of making things that happen if you just say it in passing. So that will be coming at some point.
Because people love your wisdom. I mean, they love your posts. So I'm sorry, again, I'm detracting here.
No, you're fine. But, you know, in that vein of women's friendships and talking about the hard things, fitting in the boxes, you know, all of us last night had our cards. We read them to each other, you know, and there's no pressure to talk if nobody wants to talk and you want to sit back. I get that. I'm an introvert, and being in a new experience can be uncomfortable. One of the women, her card was, I am brave, or I feel brave. And she was like, but I don't feel that way. And I was like, I think it's brave just coming here tonight. Like, that is bravery. You're showing up. And she's like, well, yeah, you're right. I don't know anybody, and I had some feelings about that. And I was like, exactly. We all do, right?
Do you see why she needs a newsletter, everyone? Do you see why?
Doing the hard things, but also, you know, as I said last night, one of the goals of these circles is to foster community. So you might see that if you come more than once, you may see familiar faces, and maybe you don't see each other outside of that one Friday a month, but we're fostering a community of shared experiences, whatever that may look like. And last night was another great evening of women sharing, being vulnerable, crying some tears.
There's always a therapeutic, I can't think of the word, but like release when they're there.
And feeling I'm not alone, and talking how you said earlier about having the smile, don't be too much, but you got to be enough. One of the things that I read last night was kind of in that vein. Xana Keithley on Instagram, always bringing the heat, all the things I love, read them, their stuff in every women's circle, and repost all the time on social media because it's so poignant and timely, which brought up a great conversation last night, what this poem was about, and the feeling of not being enough, or being told that you're too bossy, you're too aggressive, you're too assertive. People don't like that. So you have to tone yourself down, right? When the idea is, well, if we're doing heteronormative ideology here, you as a woman are too much for a man, and nobody's gonna want you to be aggressive or assertive. Don't be bossy. Don't be intimidating. Don't be all the things. But then if you're a quote-unquote pushover, then you got to be stronger, right?
And it's actually your fault if someone walks all over you.
It's your fault. Yeah. And as we discussed last night, if this was told to her as a little boy, right? It wouldn't have been told to her as a little boy.
Exactly.
Right? So she was too aggressive, too assertive, too bossy because she was a girl.
Right. And we don't want to,
we don't want to empower you.
No, we definitely want to empower you, and we don't want to take away from the power of a man because, they're basically very fragile, right? And if we threaten any type of power by just existing or sharing, then you're taking away from him. And that ideology is not only toxic to women, it's also toxic to men and any gender under
a patriarchal system.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Is that's harmful to men as well. Because they want to be partners and they want to share and they want to hear great stories, but then their buddies are like, "Oh, I see who wears the pants here," or those type of,
or being soft.
Yeah,
don't cry. Boys don't cry.
All that yucky stuff. And I think too, as I think we are sort of talking about female friendship or women identifying or friendships. When we're younger, we're sort of, I'll share with my own experience. No one sat down and said, she is your competition, but it was clear, right, that you wanted girls' friendships, but then there was, mean girl stuff or passive aggressive stuff. And we go, no one likes to experience passive aggressiveness. However, it is a creative communication style in a system that tells girls not to be aggressive, right? They figured out how to do it nicely, but we all know it's not nicely.
Right.
But I genuinely think it's a response to people just wanting to be able to, women and girls wanting to be able to share that they're pissed off and they don't like this, but they can't.
In a palatable way.
So I was like, no, we don't like it, but I was like, shout out to girls figuring it out as always, right? We figured out how to punch you in the face with some words. Now, again, not saying it's cool.
We're not condoning violence.
No, or verbal violence. But we're not. No one should be fighting and hitting anyone, but it's much more accepted to be aggressive, as we just said, in male identifying folks, right? So it's interesting that passive aggressiveness becomes a common interaction
between
girls and young girls and adult women too, because we don't feel safe enough and confident enough also to just speak truthfully. But my point just being is that some of that comes up, and don't trust too much, don't get too close too much, and whatever. And as I've reached middle age, although
we're both women in our mid 40s, and proudly will say that my birthday is on Tuesday. I will be 44 years old.
Happy birthday.
Super excited about that.
Yeah.
And I mean that without any sarcasm.
Yeah.
Because
the older we get, I feel like the wiser and the more fuck you I get.
Also, birthdays are a privilege, not a guarantee. So any year that I'm here to celebrate a birthday or the birthday of somebody that means something to me, I tend to get very excited about people's birthdays, oftentimes more excited about it than they are, simply for this reason of, you know, being excited that you're here, knowing that not everybody gets to celebrate one. We know that in general as humans, with the job that I, you know, used to do in victim services, and then having experienced, you know, the death of my mom, it's not a guarantee.
It's not a guarantee, right?
So to be excited about the fact that we're here, wrinkles, laugh lines, sagginess, all of it. I'm here for all of it.
Yep.
Because it's a visual representation of the life that we've lived and the experiences that we've had.
I love that. Again, great in the newsletter.
But I think it's great that you mentioned the female friendships, because you must have been in my head, which was something that I was going to say about, you know, last night, the women's circle and all of the women's circles really it's just way of bucking the system, I guess, because we are always in competition with each other, whether it's consciously or subconsciously. I mean, I ask all of the female identifying folks that are listening to ask themselves, how many times have you walked into a room, assessed who's there, the other women, and comparing I'm prettier than her.
Right. I'm skinnier than her. I'm not than her. I'm more successful.
I'm all the things, especially if it comes to being in the jungle of dating, right? You walk into a place, and again, this is heteronormative ideology here. Or you can take it however you want, apply it to yourself, but walking in and assessing your quote unquote competition, right? Because we have to be just a little bit better than the other ones to be chosen.
Yes.
We have to be just perfect, but not too perfect, because then
be modest,
but
be sexy.
But you also have to be perfect,
but don't be a whore.
Sexy, but don't be slutty.
Which, shout out to all the ladies who identify as whore and slutty. We love all ladies.
Right. That is not to
no shaming.
No shame of anybody, right?
We love and those words were invented to hurt us, so we try to take them back.
We're just reclaiming the label, taking back the label. So yeah, I think that's something that I do love about us coming together and talking and sharing these things without judgment.
Right. Normalizing a space. You created a space for it, even.
Right.
Yeah.
To normalize the vulnerability, and that includes myself, you know.
And in that space, you have a young girl who just graduated college, up to, you know, middle-aged women, and anywhere in between, which is like, again, this generational, right, multi-generational female support as well. I think is also even another powerful experience when you're in the women's circle and in life.
And learning from each other. Because
that we're
not competition, and just because you're younger doesn't mean that you don't have experience and knowledge and something to bring to the table.
In fact, quite often you have a lot, you know, we're all in different generations and spaces, and that's, I think, something that we believe across the board about young folks. And generally, you know, society strips young folks of any type of real power or rights when we talk about children.
Or lived experience. Like, you're young, what do you know?
Right. Well, at least really 16 years.
Let's take a child that's in high school that's lived through a school shooting.
Yeah.
I'm going to be 44 years old. I have experienced that peripherally, not in actuality, in reality, in my life. So I would say that 16-year-old definitely has a great wealth of knowledge, unfortunately,
right,
in a situation that I only know about through the media or reading about it.
Right.
So,
and even in not just tragedy, right, but you know, even these like amazing experiences, just the point just being is that, you know, all folks have something to offer and bring to the table. Society structures things as like youth don't have anything to say, or what is that? That's stupid. Your relationship's stupid. It's puppy love. Or what do you know about hard times? We have to pay a mortgage. Yeah, because you're an adult. Or we have to pay rent or whatever. You know, 16-year-olds hopefully don't have to do that. So that's not a fair assessment. It's just another group that I think is just crapped on. Any opportunity to crap on a group in our society.
However, I do think that today's youth, there I am being an old person, but today's youth really is making shit happen. They're the activists.
They're the
changing
ones.
the world. They're shining a light on all of the things that might be laughed at or made to feel like it's not important, and kind of pushing back against that. Yeah.
And I love every second of that. And I mean, I know we're kind of all over the place, but in parenting, right, there's this overarching ideology that your kid should listen and respect you and not talk back, and it's very authoritarian and it's very dictators like. And then if you don't have children like that, then you are a pushover and you're not doing a good job. I understand boundaries and all that stuff is important as well. However, I love when my daughter is like, well, why do we do that? That doesn't make sense. I think that this, I'm older now. I think this should be considered. You're right. Let's reflect on that. Let's collaborate. And she's 10, right? And same for my 6-year-old son. Just this idea, and I think it's very much a white supremacist patriarchal idea that someone should always have power over somebody else, when really we just all have something to offer. And it's also a white supremacist patriarchal idea that we're in competition all the time, or a capitalist idea that we're in competition all the time. We really don't have to be. I know there's healthy competition, but I wouldn't really call a lot of the competition we deal with as healthy. And it is through my friendships, my female friendships, that I have found so much love and growth and opportunity and safety and security and soulmate-ness, right?
Yeah.
In addition to my partner who serves a purpose, and I serve a purpose to him. And
shout out to Marcus.
Right, again, thanks for being
sound
you,
engineer. The third person in this trio of a podcast. We're the voice. He makes it sound good.
Yeah. But I mean, and that they do, but no one person should be everything to anyone ever, honestly, which is the point of a village or the point of female friendships. And our friendship has been so significant. And another friendship of mine that has been a powerful female friendship that recently just went through its own transformation and hard time. And even still that stuff came up, like, well, she's probably going to break up with me because I'm hard or I'm difficult, or I said things that were not, likable, or I had to share my truth and whatever. And fleshing that out together. Right. And I do believe coming out stronger and better for it, and being able to withstand some of those harder, times where we have to reflect on ourselves and the dynamics and what you really meant and how you hurt my feelings, and being able to do that and have hard conversations. Like the holistic psychologist talks about relationships, or healthy, like good, solid relationships are ones that are
based
able to have the hard
conversations
and the tough conversations of like, I don't like when you do this. And it's not meant to hurt your feelings, but if it does, like, that's for you to reflect on, but I need you to stop. Or I didn't understand when you did this. I thought you meant that. And then they didn't. And then there's clarification. And then there's even closer, evolution of the relationship. No. Does every relationship evolve after that? No. Sometimes they end and they go in different directions. And that's okay. Also, the holistic psychologist normalizing. Sometimes we outgrow.
We do. And my own therapist early on together, mourning the loss of some significant friendships several years ago, said something to me: reasons and seasons, Crystal. There are reasons and seasons for people to be in your life. And that's something that I continuously come back to, of every person that we meet in life, whether it's a friendship or relationship, we're not meant to be with that person forever.
I mean, many things are not forever.
Exactly.
Like most things actually are not forever.
Most things are not forever. Right. And to, take from it what you will, and take a moment of reflection, grow. Are you able to grow from the dissolving of that relationship or friendship? If you had continued to be in a relationship, whether it's friendship, partnership with this person, would you have continued to evolve into who you are today?
Right. And you and I just had that conversation recently.
We did have that conversation. And I think that's one of the beauties of friendship, or just being a human, right? Is allowing yourself to continuously come out of your chrysalis, and continuing to shed the layers, like a rebirth. Yeah. And the more we keep doing it with each other, the more we have more confidence and faith. Like in this last difficult experience with a good close friend of mine,
I felt much more confident we were going to be okay. Even if I did go, oh, I hope she doesn't break up with me. Like, of course, I hope that's true, right? That we survive and we were better for it. But I felt much more confident because I've had these experiences in these friendships where it has proven to be true that you're not just in this relationship because you're likable and palatable, but because of all of you, right? And being really seen. And being able to share the space to say, I don't feel seen right now, or I don't know what's happening, but it's not good and I don't like it, and doing it together. It just, like, when you go through that, it just feels so whole. I don't know, just so bigger even than...
Bigger or powerful. I know you've used the terminology leveling up.
Yeah. It makes me think of
Mario Brothers.
Mario Brothers when you
collect the coins.
Yeah, you're like...
But I agree. There is this feeling of, I don't know, relief, a sigh, an exhale.
Yeah.
Whatever it is.
A release. Yeah.
Yeah. And the feeling of... oh, this is what happens when you allow yourself to be vulnerable and communicate and have the hard conversations, which that's been a journey of my own that I've been navigating for the past couple of years.
And I think everybody, right? Everyone listening,
learning to have difficult conversations that wasn't modeled for me.
I was gonna say, especially if it wasn't modeled.
It wasn't modeled for me. Growing up, having communicating, healthy communication, things were, not talked about, swept under the rug, and if you don't talk about it, it didn't happen. Whatever that is, it doesn't have to be anything significant.
Right.
But learning that that's how you handle things when things get hard, you just don't talk about it, you ignore it, and then it'll be okay.
Right. And then in my experience, it's explosive, big emotions, explosive emotions,
right.
Scary emotions. And so it was just that not healthily modeled either.
Right, exactly. And then having to learn as an adult how to be vulnerable and to communicate, regulate your emotions, communicate your feelings, your needs.
And sometimes make a mess of it and be like, you're still lovable anyway, right? Because you don't do perfect. We're always working and digging and trying to figure out and reflecting and asking ourselves stuff. And sometimes we also are like, I'm just fuck everything, right? And then your friend's like, okay, look, I don't know what this is, but it's not your norm. So I'm here for it, but like, what's going on?
Right. Yeah. And grappling with it, on your personal level of, if I say the things, am I going to be rejected?
Yeah.
Am I going to be abandoned?
Yep.
Am I unworthy of it? Which it is a whole podcast episode in and of itself, right?
Maybe episode 3.
The feelings of unworthiness and rejection and abandonment, and like we've been saying all along, the being too much.
Yeah.
For folks. And I know that having difficult conversations has been something that I've been working on the past couple of years, whether that is with friends, family, partner. My partner and I have had some difficult conversations, which is healthy in a partnership, right? Especially when you're getting to know each other and allowing yourself to be vulnerable and fully seen for all of the things, and grappling with your own insecurities.
How they show up.
How they show up, especially on my part of that.
Sure.
But being able to have the hard conversation when anybody who knows me is going to laugh at this, but I want to duck and run. Even my partner knows that, that when things get hard, I shut down on the inside, which I'm sure is some, biological fight, flight, freeze, fawn, all of the things where you just want to get to safety.
Yeah, absolutely.
For me, that's getting out of a situation of where I feel uncomfortable and being by myself and processing, which is true for so many things, just not difficult conversations. It's, my mom's first death anniversary last year was a similar situation of thinking that what I want it to be was alone. And
which had some truth to it.
Which did have some truth to it, and knowing that part of that was because I didn't want to make anybody else feel uncomfortable with my feelings, right? Because we don't like to sit in other people's discomfort.
And you had also mentioned not wanting to feel like you had to tend to their discomfort while you're uncomfortable.
Right, exactly. And in that experience and in other experiences that I've had, in knowing that allowing yourself to have connection, Jen and I went to the beach, which is my safe healing space, and you were in a thing your own self at the time, and so going to the beach was very cathartic.
It was actually was a beautiful
fall day.
September day.
So it was everything that both of us needed, didn't know we needed, but felt restored.
I think we were like co-regulating, right? We were just hanging out with each other. We didn't necessarily explicitly talk about any
we didn't talk about anything. We were just together, which is I think what's important is just to be able to be without having to
perform,
without being performative, or being able to talk freely about, my mom or how I was feeling or any of the things. It was also a time in my relationship where I was having this realization of, hey, maybe I might be in love and love this person.
Maybe you love her, dum-dum.
And so it was just a lot of things, but I found that when, like in that situation, when it's something that I want it to be, how I want to honor my mom or celebrate a holiday, a birthday, when I am able to take control of it, which I think comes to the anxiety stuff.
Yeah, of course.
I can make it what I want. So I'm basically rewriting the narrative.
Yeah, absolutely.
Of reclaiming it and making it something that feels comfortable, safe, loving, which I have no idea where that really was going. Oh, ducking and running and having hard conversations, right?
Well, and I think that's, again, the beauty of us just talking is, this today, our podcast started with infanticide and ended with female friendships, which I think is the anecdote.
There is a connection there, right? Of having that support. And
the anecdote to the pain often is sitting with somebody, and we talked about this you talked about this last podcast, just being with you. It doesn't have to say anything or make it better. Sometimes it is just being with you. Sometimes it is saying things too, but it is
being seen and supported and knowing that you're accepted.
Yeah.
And loved just how you are.
Right.
Your messy, imperfect
yeah.
self.
And let's get messy outside more, right? Like being able to show it more, because your messiness isn't what you think it is, of this, like, you know, this is also fine, but mascara running down your face, screaming and being, ah, which that's how I see myself sometimes. Or you know that one, what's that meme we sent each other to the
Oh, there is a meme that Jenn sent me a couple of years ago that really is, sometimes you don't have to say anything. You just send this, but it's of I think a female wrestler.
Yeah, she kind of looks like Britney Spears.
She's screaming. You can see her screaming. Her makeup, her red lipstick is all over her face. Yeah. Her mascara's running, and sometimes you don't have to say it. You just, you know how you're feeling. Like the world is on fire and you just want to scream and rage it out.
Right. And she's the quintessential, like, patriarchal idea, crazy woman, right? Yeah. And really it's just how we all feel. And it is a fun one. There's this other meme that, you know, this is, you know, enjoy this, everybody.
Is this the Elmo setting things on fire?
No, that one's hilarious. But the other one you sent me where it's a unicorn just, like, walking along and it's, like, dying on the inside.
Right. Bopping along, looking happy, but it says dying on the inside.
Right. Like, you have to check out that kind of stuff because, again, it's those little things of just being supportive of one another. And, of course, the bigger moments of sitting in a room with each other and crying it out and sharing our feelings, and or doing a podcast together or whatever. But
well, and I think that meme, right, speaks perfectly if we're tying it together, right? The idea of looking like everything's great, the unicorn is beautiful and magical and all of the things, and this little unicorn has a big old smile on its face. It's galloping along, and in all intents and purposes, it looks happy, life is wonderful, and then with the saying of dying on the inside, but I got a smile on. Isn't that really just so fitting? Because that's how we often feel a lot, right? We're feeling stuff on the inside, but we can't let anybody else see for whatever reason. We're at work and we're not in a space that's going to be tolerated, accepted, celebrated. You can't have feelings. You're getting in the way.
Right.
In our relationships, in our friendships, wherever it is, right? We have to put on that facade, that big old smile, and know that on the inside you're dead.
And keep going, though.
And just keep on going. Because you got to keep on trotting or galloping along.
Which I do think ties into what we talked about at the very top, you know?
Exactly.
But I do think this is a great place to end our first podcast. And I want to say a couple, I know last time we talked about social media accounts to follow. So one of them is Revolution from Home, which is Beth Berry. So she's at Revolution from Home. I think it's The Maternal Revolution, at Mixing Up Motherhood, and at Birth Monopoly, which you probably don't have to say at, but, you know, I'm in my 40s, so at. Those 4 are important to me. Crystal mentioned Transcending
Trauma Through Yoga,
which we mentioned last time, just revisiting that again, and Travel and Balanced.
Yep, Kim of at Travel and Balanced on Instagram.
Yep.
So.
And reminder that Cottage 10 is the promo code for podcast listeners for services with Crystal. And you can go to balancemindjourney.com/yoga schedule to check that out.
If you or anyone you know is currently experiencing a mental health crisis or suicidal ideation, help is here. I believe the new national hotline or number you can dial is 988. Is that correct?
I believe so, yes. And also, you know, one of the programs we developed is Postnatal Support Advocates, which is explicitly came out of the pain of being unsupported as a mother, with myself and one of my colleagues, and hearing the pain for women. And so what we do in regards to maternal health is we know how sensitive the first few months, really, let's be real, it's forever, but we're going to explicitly say the first few months after birth, which is called the 4th trimester, is a very vulnerable time for folks. And we say to folks experiencing mental health issues, just ask for help. As we know, that is not the effective method. What the effective method is for folks to rush in. Rush in's not what I mean. Kind of descend upon the person and provide the support and normalize it, right? And so in our world and in our dreams, a person has a baby and we just show up. They don't ask for it. They don't say, "Hey, I'm struggling," because by the time they're struggling, it's so much further than it had to be. So we would love for anyone who just gave birth to be like, "Oh, here comes those postnatal support advocates." You know, that would, of course, be a disruption in the system, which I'm a huge fan of. And maybe it will be one day true. But if you have any folks that you know who've had a baby, I don't care if it's in the first couple of months, but, you know, that they're adjusting to that, we're here to support you emotionally. And it's not because something's wrong with you. It's because you had a baby. That's it. That's an event in your life that should be honored and respected. There's even a word for it called matrescence. I think that's how you say it. But nobody knows it. I don't even know how to say it because
we don't talk about it.
It's the process of becoming a mother. But again, no one thinks it's just drop a baby out, you're a mom, you're cool. There's so much more that happens to a person when they become a mother that is biological, emotional, physical, spiritual, everything. And there's just no real regard for that. So I do want to plug Postnatal Support Advocates only because I just want to serve moms, period, and especially moms who are struggling, but I don't know a mom who isn't struggling in some capacity, so really it's just everybody. So that's also through balancemindjourney.com, and there's right on the landing page, it's
maternal mental health.
Yeah, it's like I forget what the actual term, I made this website hilarious, but the terminology clearly is talking about postnatal support or support around birth. So that's my last little spiel.
So I guess that's it for us. We're going to wrap it up.
We love you.
We love you. We appreciate your support.
Thanks for riding with us.
Thanks for being here these 24 hours of this recording and sitting through some uncomfortable, maybe triggering things, maybe stuff that you're like, you can fuck all the way off.
Right.
Or maybe you're of the, fuck yeah, you're saying the things, or maybe you're in between, or maybe you just don't care either way, right? But thank you for being here. Not sure when this podcast will be released.
Soonish. Marcus turns around soon.
Soonish. And
we'll see you out there.
So please get in touch if you have questions, concerns. You can find us on social media at Healing Cottage
Delaware.
Meet Me at the Cottage podcast.
At Postnatal Support Advocates, at Yoga with Crystal.
0925. So that's on Instagram. That's on Facebook. You can find us all there.
Yeah.
You can reach out. Give us your opinions. You can like, review, subscribe. Do all of the things. Mm-hmm. Just be nice.
Yeah.
So if we said something you didn't really agree with, that's great. These are all our own opinions.
You can say it passive aggressively, I guess.
These are all of our own opinions and feelings.
Yes.
So
yes.
We're welcome to hearing what your input is.
Yeah.
So thanks, everybody.
Bye. Where we say, you know those videos where they chew on stuff? She just got, what, are you getting stage fright? Stop it.
I do have stage fright.
Okay, but you remember last time you didn't?
Yes, I do remember last time I didn't.
I do like this setup better. I feel like we're two gals chatting.
Got our coffees. Coffees and conversation.
Oh, Coffees and Conversation with Nicole.
Sponsored by Trainer Mommy.
Yes. She may not endorse anything we say.
Hi, Marcus.
Yeah,
Yay.
we did it. Happy birthday to you.
Thank you.
Happy birthday to you.
Hold the fire.
Happy birthday, dear Crystal.
Oh, gosh. Okay, we got pictures.
Happy birthday to you. Yeah.
Thanks. Yay.
Happy birthday, Boo.
Thanks.